Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Cassidy Diamond, and I am the Associate Director of Public Programs and Events here at the IDA. Thank you for joining us around this conversation for Ascension, moderated by IndieWire's Anne Thompson. Before we get started, I would like to offer a brief land acknowledgement. I'm coming to you today from Chicago, which is on the unceded land of the Potawatomi people, who have been stewards of this land for generations. I would also like to thank IndieWire for their support in bringing the screening series to you all. And we have a few screenings upcoming. You can go to documentary.org/screenings-series to find out some more information. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Anne to get us started.
Welcome to this IDA panel for Ascension, which has been getting incredible response at film festivals and early awards buzz. Please welcome the filmmaker, Jessica Kingdon, and the producers, Simon Kennedy, and Nathan Truesdell. Hello, everybody.
How's it going?
Nice to see you. So this movie, I think the reason why it's getting such a response is because I don't think we've ever seen a movie quite like this before. I haven't. It's extraordinary visually and in terms of the content and the structure and the story that you're telling about China, modern China. Jessica, start us off. What is the original nugget, the very beginning of the idea of what you started with for this movie? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't even think that this was a movie that I would be able to pull off or make in the first place because, like you said, there's not many movies out there with this kind of structure where there's no straightforward story or character that we're following. So, in that vein, initially, it actually started off as a trilogy idea. I had made a short in 2017 called Commodity City, which Kira produced, and that takes place in the largest wholesale mall in the world, which is in Yiwu, China. And it's this huge 5-mile long mall where all of the like cheap disposable goods that we interact with on a day-to-day basis, they all pass through this mall because that's where the wholesale buyers go. So I wanted to make a short film that kind of showed the source of where all of these objects pass through. And then after that, I wanted to keep making films in China. I was interested in China for many reasons. One is for reasons of heritage. I'm half Chinese. And other is just this interest in China as being this global stage for these larger questions being played out related to the paradox of progress. So, as you know, China has gone through insane changes in the past few decades. And it was once known as the world's factory and is now one of the largest consumer markets in the world. So I was really interested in understanding what that does to a nation, to a people, to a culture. So Kira and I actually originally pitched this as a trilogy at IFP in 2017. And it originally was more environmentally driven. I was trying to look at the cycle of production, consumption, and waste. And as I was pitching it, someone said to us, hey, why isn't this a feature? Because there's so many ideas in here. And it is actually what I had wanted to do all along, but I just didn't really think that it was possible. But just, that one person saying it kind of put the idea in my mind, like maybe I can take all these disparate places together and somehow put them into one project. And so really the interest was these invisible sites of these economies that power our day-to-day lives as we understand it, our tech-dependent lives. But as we started shooting, it became really more about the quest for upward mobility and really about the meaning of work.
So you're talking in these thematic terms, but and obviously they support the narrative that you have come up with. But what you capture us with initially is this extraordinary eye candy. It's really great the way this movie looks, and as an American, who has visited China and has some clue to the scale of the place, which is immense. I mean, when you just see the scale of the buildings and the roads and the cities, it blows your mind. But what you show here are images that I've never ever seen, and they're they're almost alien to me. So talk. Maybe the producers can get into this too. Talk about how you found those images, how you knew where to look for them, and where the access to them came from.
A lot of the places are quite visually striking, but a lot of them also weren't. Like we shoot in a lot of like conference rooms and lecture halls and schools and things like that. So I had to find a way to really balance the two of them because I knew that the crux of this film was it's visually driven. So I think part of it is just the vastness of these kinds of, like I said, the invisible economies. Like I'm thinking about the rare earths mineral mine, which takes place at the end of the movie. That is where that is the source of rare earths, which is what is used to create smartphones and computers and things like that. And you would just never imagine what the scale of these kinds of places would look like.
I think though that Jess, being the main cinematographer of this film, she was really focused on finding places that were visually interesting to tell the story. There are a lot of places that could tell the story, but using visual, using images to like actually make this what it is what you were like really focused on, I think.
And also unusual camera angles, if I may be so bold. You put yourself in strange places. Tell me some stories of twisting yourself into knots in order to capture those weird doll heads or you know, the bikes lined up or whatever, you know, there's so many striking images.
Yeah, we use actually a few drone shots in the movie.
Yeah.
And we had drone operators who were shooting those, but we would tell them, don't actually move the drone, because most drone shots that we're used to are these kinds of sweeping shots where they're in motion, creating this sort of slick look. And I wanted the drone shots to be similar to all of the other shots we did, which were on the tripod, like still, steady shots. And surprisingly, to get a drone operator to operate a drone without moving it is much harder, I learned, than having it move the way we're used to seeing it in commercials and things like that. Because it's like a helicopter, it's like harder for it to circle in one place. So the drone operators just kept trying to, you know, move it around, and so we'd have to keep saying like, no, this is how we want it. But we shot it, you know, on a tripod the whole movie pretty much. So we didn't really have to like twist our bodies, right? It was more, for me at least, it was an exercise in not touching the camera, which for me is very hard. I'm always wanting to move it around, seeing new things. We're in places where lots is happening and I'm trying to just like let the images speak for themselves. So for me, the hard part was actually like separating myself from it and letting the images flow.
Or letting things happen in front of the camera that you don't expect. It was more about patience than it was about twisting our bodies.
Maybe our minds were being twisted.
So no, but go back to the question before. I mean, how did you find these locations?
And we worked with just an amazing team of film producers in China, but a lot of the start would sometimes be Jessica seeing like a photo essay or a journalist write about a place and really get intrigued about what these places would look like. And then it would be a process of sending a lot of WeChat messages and getting in touch with dozens, if not hundreds of places and seeing who would say yes. I live in China part of the year before the pandemic and work with a nonprofit that does helps artists do projects all over the country. And so we started with this network of artist residencies and artists all across the country. But really it was just a lot of like someone's friend, cousin might know a place and really kind of following those threads. And just a lot of perseverance and a great team that really, you know, helped us find all of these places.
And what were some of the production challenges on this movie in terms of access or people getting in your way?
Well, just adding on to that, we shot in 51 locations, and I like to say that not all of the locations made it into the movie, but each location really had a different story in terms of how we got access. Like sometimes it would be through someone that somebody knew. Sometimes it would be one of our field producers reaching out to hundreds of places before one place would say yes. Sometimes it was really easy, sometimes it was really hard. And what's surprising is that the hard places are places that people don't really notice that much in the film. Like we shoot in a cryptocurrency mine, and their legal status at the time was a gray status in China, so they weren't really supposed to be operating. And so Kira and I had to like go out on a limb at one point, like driving hours into the countryside, not sure if we would even find this place that was like a pin on a map kind of thing. So sort of really just going out on a limb. And then the other place is a rare earths mineral mine. Those places were really difficult to find, but people barely noticed them. And then the sex doll factory and the bodyguard school, those were super easy places to get access to. So culturally, it's hard to say, like, it's just sort of a different sensibility. I mean, another story I like to tell is that Maggie, our co-producer, was messaging with a factory owner who made, what was it? I think it was Trump hats. We were looking for like a Trump hat factory. And he didn't want us to film with him because he was worried that afterwards we were going to hit him up with a bill for appearing in our movie. So, it's just sort of the power dynamics in these situations are maybe different than one might expect. Another story is when Nate and I were at a plastic bottle recycling factory, which, by the way, also made those huge carpets that you see in that crazy factory. Those carpets end up at IKEA a lot of the times. At that place, it was a huge factory campus, and on day 3, the CEO took us into his office for tea, which is not a good sign. And then he started angrily talking to our fixer, and it turned out he thought that Nate and I were corporate spies because of the way we were shooting, which is very detail oriented, very slow, very methodical. He thought we were trying to steal the trade secrets of the factory. And he basically was like, if you're really a documentary crew, then where's your host? Meaning, where's the person standing in front of the camera with a microphone explaining what we're seeing? Because he wasn't used to that kind of observational style of shooting. So our fixer had to really save us and convince him, look at these dumb Americans. Do you really think that they're able to steal your factory secrets?
I love it. I love it. So you created a structure. You did end up with 3 parts for the movie. Explain how you came up with those overarching ideas. The factories, the middle class, and the wealthy. Is that about right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's so simple, the concept of it, where it's loosely ascending the class structure,
right,
loosely climbing the capitalist ladder. But that idea didn't come till the end, really, even though it's the most straightforward one. So sometimes the thing that's right in front of you is the hardest to find. But yeah, I wanted to show the interconnectivity of all of these spaces and to show how one doesn't really exist without the other. Initially, we had chapter headings separating them out. And for a while, Nate was like, Jess, you don't need those chapter headings. They can come out. And I felt like I needed them in order to explain something. And I ended up leaving them in until one of the final fine cuts. And the way I thought of them was training wheels, almost putting up the scaffolding of the structure of the movie until I was able to internally tell myself what each section was about, and then I could take them out afterwards. So, I mean, the editing is in that sort of intellectual exercise way of like, you know, factories and labor, then aspiration, middle class, live streamers, and then sort of hedonism, leisure, the upper class. But I also, as I kept going forward with the editing, allowed myself to lean into these more dreamlike sequences as well. So there's this one section of the movie right before we get to the water park, the water slide, where all these people are just sleeping. And, you know, initially, like, that is not something I would ever think about to make. It's only like after so many iterations that we had like all of these people sleeping, it just made sense to, especially since the film is really exploring the Chinese dream. I was thinking like, oh, it's kind of a pun here, like these people are sleeping and then we wake up and then you're in this sort of like alternate universe that's like very surreal because you see like those abstract shots of the slides going down. Yeah.
So the editing was crucial to this. Don't forgive me if I'm stepping on toes, but it must have been painful, even.
Oh yeah, it was kind of like pulling teeth sometimes. You know, it's like anything, like once you get into a flow of it, it can be really fun and really rewarding. But figuring out the structure and figuring out how to crack it was really hard, especially since there's no one telling you like this is what it's supposed to be like.
I see that.
But no one else could have edited this movie besides Jess. Jess shot, directed, and edited the movie, which I think is quite incredible. But if someone else had taken this on, it would have been a different movie completely.
So the structure really beautifully came together. We would sort of go film and Jessica would come back and edit. And the editing also kind of happened simultaneously. But almost until the very end, we had been calling the film the Untitled People's Republic of China project for years. And it wasn't until the very end that the structure came together and even the title kind of emerged. And really kind of finding these happy accidents. It never would have happened if we had set out to make a certain kind of film. If Jessica was like, you know, I wanted to start and end this way, it really had to be discovered in the process.
Yeah, it feels very organic, and that's part of what makes it so unpredictable and so, forgive the expression, unique. I really applaud you all because I didn't know what was coming. I didn't know where it was going. I went with the flow, which is exactly what you wanted, I guess.
Totally. That's great to hear because it takes you on a wild ride and like we never really knew if people would respond to it the way we did.
It's entertaining, actually.
It's actually pretty entertaining as well.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, did you expect that? Were you seeking that?
I think I wanted to make a movie that was kind of on the line of something that was seen as more of an art film and something that was more accessible and entertaining. So in that sense, yes.
So when did you first show it to an audience?
We showed it in June 2021.
At Tribeca.
Yes.
And then you won the award as well.
Yeah. I almost I didn't know that we were even like in the running really. Like I almost didn't show up to the awards thing because I wasn't even 100% sure that we were like, that's where we were up for that kind of. And Kira was like, Jess, you should really go. And
they sent us an email the night before saying, you're coming, right? And we were like, are we coming? I don't know, should we go? And Jess was like, well, I'll go if you go. And we're like, oh, okay, I guess maybe we'll go. I was like, let's go, say hi, see what happens. And yeah, we were in no way expecting any of that. And it was such an exciting moment.
But what was it like to see it play with an audience? I'm really curious.
Well, it premiered at Hudson Yards. So it was
outdoors.
It was outdoors.
It was basically on the vessel.
It was a most ironic setting because Hudson Yards is like this mall that sprang up overnight. And I mean, the first time I got out of the subway and saw it finished, I thought I was in China. It looks like the buildings still look like renderings. But the most special thing about showing outdoors for me was people who didn't know what it was would walk by and they would stand next to the hot dog cart and they're with their family. And some people stayed and watched the whole movie. they were just so mesmerized, and it was our first time showing it in public, and I was like, okay, we did something right. There was folks in the High Line who stopped to watch, and that to me was the biggest testament to having made something that people cared about and wanted to see more of, even if they had no idea what they were walking into.
Yeah,
Exactly.
But I think actually watching it in a theatrical setting, which we've done many times after that, has been interesting to see people take what they want from it. Some people are like very frightened of it. Some people are like excited about it. I don't know. It's interesting, like in the way that it's structured and that it's so verite that everyone can kind of grab onto whatever they think it is.
Well, you made a decision that probably made your life harder for you, which was to have no voiceovers and interviews, right?
yeah, because I think the film is really an exercise in putting the viewers in a position where they're sort of deluged with these images and sounds, and it's up to the individual viewer to make sense of what they're seeing. So it's asking a lot of a viewer in some ways, because I'm not telling you like what to think or what something means, and I think sometimes that makes people uncomfortable. So in that way, it's not always easy, especially like having conversations around it can also be quite slippery, since it's about many things.
It's
What
also
kind
been,
of conversations have you had? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
oh
ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, hearing people walk out of the screenings and have conversations about capitalism and really invisible systems, and being surprised at who they identified with, but also just really concrete things, like people saying like, I had no idea that for cosmetics bottles, someone still has to connect the tube to the clicker thing. I think people are leaving with so many things that have washed over them that bring up extremely deep questions about, the systems we're all living under, but also their role in it. But also just really, there's a lot of information there that people just, it's so great to eavesdrop and hear which bits have stuck with people and what they're thinking about when they walk out.
Well, people don't really think about where all of those products come from or how they're made. It's true.
Yeah, and one thing that's been heartening for me about reactions is that, at least in like a US context here in the States, people will walk out and say, wow, that really made me think about America almost more than China, and like reflect on my own life and system that I live in. So that's been heartening, because that's definitely what I had in mind when I was making it.
So part of the thing that you do here too is audio. You are definitely using sound as a part of, as a character. Talk about how you captured the sound and what your ideas were for the sound design.
Nate and I like made sure in a lot of these locations to capture the sounds of different machinery in factories, or at the opening we see a bicycle graveyard, which is where these rideshare bikes are disposed of because they're broken. And so like capturing the beeping of those bikes, capturing the clicking sounds of cryptocurrency mines. We made sure to capture all of those sounds separately so that our composer Dan Deacon could use the raw materials to use to inform his score. So he did take a lot of those sounds and repurpose them for the incredible score that he made for this. Yeah, and I think in addition to that, we also were very intentional about miking people whenever we could, to capture that first person audio in order to put us in someone else's subjectivity. And an example I always like to talk about is in one of the in the plastic water bottle manufacturing company, there's this young woman who's like very diligently putting on the stickers of the plastic bottles, the labels. And we mic'd her, and my fixer Jack was like, oh, she's not talking to anyone, she's just standing there, like why do you need to mic her? And I was like, no, just in case, we need to have like feel some sort of audio presence from her. And at one point she takes a break and she opens a thermos of water that she brought to work with her to take a drink out of it. And just like the unscrewing of that lid of that metal lid and screwing it back on, for me, was really crucial, because, you know, we feel her subjectivity, we feel the irony of her working in this plastic bottle factory, but bringing her own, you know, thermos of water to work.
And I think we thought about the sound a lot. We talked about the sound a lot, and we had a lot of like mics whenever we were running around shooting in China. And Dan Deacon did like a great job with the score, like really collaborated with Jess. He didn't just like drop into this project. He's like a major portion of it. And Gisela, our sound designer, also did like an amazing job working with all of the material that we had. But yeah, it's very dense sound, for sure.
But you got up close to some of those sewing machines and stitching, and it was frightening, actually, the robotic aspect of what these human beings are forced to do. Really, it was painful to see.
We also hope that one thing that comes across is just how everyone feels about work. I think it's really, there's been a lot of amazing films around worker organizing or labor conditions, but this one really hones in onto like how people feel having to do all these jobs and the ways they reclaim time from their boss and watch a film while they're doing it, or take naps on work, or really kind of sort of navigate the line of not wanting to pay the bribes, or dealing with those kinds of conditions. And the soundscape and the kind of the dialogue that Jessica edited into this film, we hope really helps to make people feel like they're there, but imagine like what it would actually feel like to be doing that, not just knowing that it exists, but like thinking about how people are there all day, and like every day those are their interactions.
Was there anything that you discovered while making this film that gave you hope about the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people see this as pretty bleak. But it's funny because it's actually not how I felt while being there. And also, even when I watch the footage, like some of it is kind of bleak and repetitive, but some of it I find actually really, there's a lot of humor involved. And I think people's individualities, when given the space and time, it really shines through, even through all of this kind of like seemingly monoculture that we see on screen. I think that there's just like so much of just humor and joy, even, that for me shines through. So for me, the film is really about holding two truths at once, because on one hand there's like this truth of economic progress, people having jobs, millions of people being lifted out of poverty, innovation, and of course there's also the truth of exploitation, income inequality, pollution, repression. So I think this film is really trying to hold space for these two truths existing side by side. And also, I don't know, in terms of hope, like we made a lot of friends on the way that we worked with. And it was actually like quite a joyous process for me.
Are you showing it in China?
We're hoping to. Yeah, we're trying to figure that out.
That would be interesting. What about the festivals there? Would they book it there?
I don't know yet. I mean, I think we submitted to some. I don't know if we've heard back. Yeah, I think we just haven't heard back yet, right?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, like one, bunch of Chinese festivals.
Good.
I mean, I would love to show it there. It's definitely what we kind of were envisioning all along. And we have sent it to individuals, people that we worked with, and friends and family in China. But, you know, of course, that's still...
It's tricky. I mean, it's tricky, obviously.
Yeah, but still a small sample. So, you know, I'm hoping to show it to a broader audience, because right now, everyone who's seen it kind of knows us. But it'll be cool to see it for people who don't know us at all, or like know friends of ours, just like random anyone to see it.
So you would have to find a distributor there and go through the SARS system to get it approved to be shown?
It seems that way. I think so. Yeah, so we're working on it.
That could be really, really interesting. Well, thank you, everybody. This was really fun. I learned a lot about how you made this, and it's again, congrats on this. I've never seen a movie like it, and it's beautiful. Is the main thing in the end.
That's quite a compliment. And I think I'm really taking my time to try to figure out what the next project is. I would say I'm in early development on something new that is also related to resource extraction and animals and food production, but it's still too early to what's so funny because it's so many things.
I suspect you're being inundated now with people wanting to work with you, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, because the way I work too is so, it's not like one specific story that I'm really going after. So that's why it's kind of hard to really say, oh, it's this thing.
This has all happened so quickly. Like the movie premiered in June and it's only November now. So
yeah,
just writing this out as we come back into reality.
Indeed. All right. What were some of the pandemic issues that you had to deal with?
Well, luckily none, because we finished shooting in December 2019. I came back from China and I was like, oh man, I think that might have been the last trip. But, maybe we do need more footage. And then this crazy thing happened.
Which gave you maybe more time in the editing room after all. And more time with the music and the tinkering of the sound, all that stuff, right?
I mean, I hate to say, in some ways it benefited us because Dan Deegan is usually on tour a lot. And because of the pandemic, he wasn't able to go and perform. So he was kind of forced to sit at home and really work with me. And that's why our collaboration, we had so much time together, which I think made us go so much better.
And the edit. We would still be shooting if the pandemic didn't happen.
So you went with what you had. Okay. Thank you very much. Great to meet you.
Great to meet you.
Bye-bye all.